Hello. On Providence. This is the title of Book 6, Chapter 1 of Discourses by Epictetus. And so, Epictetus starts this discourse, and it sounds, when you read it first, it really comes across to me as as intelligent design, as a sort of creationism, because Epictetus is really discussing, he starts out by discussing how nature was created, by providence or by, a god, I guess you could say. Um, and so, he says at one point even, um, why were colors created if not, to see them? If they weren't created, then there wouldn't have been a purpose to create them. If they weren't created to be seen, they wouldn't have been. Providence wouldn't have created them. And this sort of flies in the face of what our modern understanding of how the Earth came to be as it is. I don't. I think if you read it very dogmatically, it comes across as sort of, like I said, intelligent design, creationism. So, I thought, okay. And then, he goes on to say, not only are things created sort of in their forms. So he said, he says in the beginning, things are created in their form, like male, female, the sword fits in the scabbard kind of thing. Like it's, sort of made the way it is for a reason. And then he goes on to talk about for a purpose. Things are made for a purpose. So nature's the way it is for a purpose. So he goes on to say, like, some animals their purpose is to be eaten, or their purpose is to work in fields, or their purpose is to make cheese. And this flies in the face sort of also of what we know about evolution, meaning that the nature evolved the way it did due to environmental factors and other sorts of genetic reasons. And so animals didn't get created to make cheese for us, and they didn't get created to work in fields for us. That this actually, humans existed before domestication of animals, and so all this happened afterwards. So we understand today that this is not our history as humans, and it's not our history. It's not the way nature works to us. So it might have been the way it worked to them, but I think that we can still take a lesson from this part of the discourse, which is the first kind of half of the discourse, in that we can look at how nature has evolved, and we can see how it's in harmony with itself, or maybe how it's in places where it's not in harmony with itself. But we can observe the world this way. With our understanding now of evolution and cultural evolution even, and this sort of thing. So I still think it has a valuable lesson to us, because what Epictetus is really saying to us is we need to understand how the things around us came to be, and then what is nature, and then versus what is also fate, meaning things that have just kind of come out of the blue, that are not necessarily related to fixed nature versus turbulent occurrence. So hope that made sense. That's how I interpret that first half. Then the second half, he mentions, speaking of how fate, things that come at us from maybe we could say outside of nature, or outside of just sort of the kind of clockwork of the operation of the world. He says then sort of the next half is this discussion around. He says everyone wants to go to Olympia basically as tourists and see the sights that they think, okay, I can't finish my life without going to Olympia and seeing, these famous sites. And, so then the students say, yeah, but, so he says, so why would you want to do that when you're not even willing to contemplate and understand what's around you. If you're not willing to contemplate and understand what's actually around you, why would you want to go off as a tourist to Olympia? And so the students answer, yeah, well, there's, it's troublesome, and there's troubles and woes here, basically. So, why would we not want to go, and see the beautiful sights of Olympia? And Epictetus' answer was, well, is there not also troubles and woes, in Olympia? There's the trouble of traveling, and then there's the trouble in Olympia. It's the same sort of existence, right? So the human existence, the human condition is not different in Olympia necessarily than it would be where you are. So, I think that that's very that was very kind of funny in a way, because I think that's very relevant to us today, because I think people today do the same thing. They want to get away from it all. They want to get away from the troubles and go somewhere where they can forget about them. And there's a certain validity to that, because it's certain healing to go elsewhere where you can sort of escape maybe stressors and things like that, and sort of rethink and get a more clear mind so that you can actually deal with them. But Epictetus says, you got to be willing to deal with. You got to be willing to deal with things where you are as well, and so he goes on to say, what would have happened if the lion hadn't come across Heracles, Hercules, who had to overcome all of these trials, to reach his goal. If he didn't have that, he wouldn't have been who he was, basically, and he wouldn't have been a hero, because he wouldn't have made it through, and he wouldn't have been able to be heroic, and he wouldn't have been able to, Epictetus goes on to say, to clean the world of these sort of evil things that were standing in his way. Not only his way, but were persecuting others as well. So Heracles, being heroic. So I think that's, a good lesson for us too, that, we can't be ourselves without the trials and tribulations and overcoming the troubles that we have around us, actually right around us. So we can't run away from that. We can't run away as a tourist to Olympia or somewhere and ever escape that, because it's going to be with us when we come back. So that's kind of what I took away from that that discourse. So it was kind of the first part was setting us up then for the second part. So anyway, I hope you found that somewhat interesting and informative. The next discourse is on the use of variable premises and hypothetical arguments and the like. So that should be interesting. So stay tuned for that. So until next time, catch you soon. Bye.